Welcome back once more. This is KTN News Desk on KTN News. Let's take you back to the county of Mombasa again. The county reproductive health coordinator, Emily Moringa, has warned that cases of teenage pregnancies in the county are alarming. Last year, about 3,000 cases of pregnancies to those under 18 years of age were recorded in Mombasa alone. Moringa said it is disheartening to see children as young as 10 years old getting pregnant. She was speaking during a forum to engage Mombasa members of the county assembly. Stakeholders have attributed high rates of school drop among girls to teen pregnancies, among other factors.
Teenage pregnancy is on the increase, and all this, there are so many reasons we might actually relate to that. One being the poverty index we have in Mombasa County, and you know Mombasa is actually fully urban, and we are seeing an upsurge of the teenage pregnancies. They are not going to school, and there are so many reasons which we've also discussed with our MCAs, and we want to know why. Why are these children getting pregnant? And some are even married. Children as low as 16 years. They are married. They're already married, and those are actually minors.
Our message is to actually request and lobby for members of County Assembly, whom I'm proud of today in the presence of the chair of the Health Committee, to work with us towards addressing investment in nutrition, investment in family planning. Secondly, we are also calling on the partners to coordinate well so that our response is more targeted, and we are happy to have members represented here. We are lucky to have you, the media fraternity, who are able to now pass this message to our communities. We are looking forward to better progress because organizations like DSW have invested. We are hoping other organizations will also invest, and this will challenge the government to also increase allocation.
Lack of participation in decision-making spaces, and generally high rates of unemployment among the youth, which undermines their ability to make decisions concerning their lives, but also to be able to meaningfully engage in our development agenda. So generally for DSW, it is about how to rally the voices of young people in spaces where they are required with the right knowledge and the right information, using strong, robust networks.
All right, let's take you back to our top story this afternoon, and we're focusing on the World Day Against Trafficking of Persons, a day that was set aside 5 years ago by the United Nations member states to try and shed light on this and protect rights of human and talk about this problem. And in studio with us this afternoon, we have two ladies who have more than average knowledge of the gravity of this issue. We have Catherine Wanjohi, co-founder and CEO of Life Bloom Service International, as well as Scholastica Morioki, CEO, Tropical Trainers and Consultants. We shall be just talking to them to put more perspective on this issue. Let me start with you, Catherine. You have over 15 years experience in trying to support women and girls who have been victims of human trafficking. If you can just paint the picture for us, just how, because many times this comes off as just numbers and statistics for a lot of the people in news, but how big is this problem, especially from a Kenyan perspective?
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here this afternoon. The conversation around human trafficking and the exploitations that come with it are real, and quite often we look at them like they're coming from outside of Kenya, but being on the ground and working within Naivasha for the last 15 years, I can sit here and authoritatively say that, yes, we do have not just the cases, but the perpetrators amongst us. People walking back and forth innocently and very ignorantly, not knowing that we have all participated in creating a world where women and girls especially become very vulnerable to a point that they're either trafficked here in Kenya, that is locally, domestic human trafficking, or they actually become very vulnerable and get out of the borders of Kenya with the promises of good jobs and whatever else, and then they end up becoming slave laborers and exploited in very many ways. It's real.
So you talk about, and we hear a lot about many victims who are of the female gender. Do we have men being victims of these atrocities?
Oh yes, of course we do have men, but to a very small degree. 80% of all cases of trafficking reported are actually women, girls, and children. And so you can imagine that the men take a very small percentage, if any, but true, they are there. Because when it comes to issues of vulnerability, because of poverty, very low life skills, dysfunctional families, name it, then it affects all of us. It affects everybody. But of course, the female gender is more vulnerable than the male gender in this case.
Scholastica, let me bring you to this conversation. The United Nations cites human trafficking happening both to people in both their countries and abroad. Here in Kenya, people seem to think it only happens abroad. Is that the case? Do we have this happening in our own country?
Oh, true, yes. We have so much of it happening in our own country. That is what we call the domestic trafficking. And this is something that is perpetuated by almost everybody, each one of us, starting from the parents to the schools, to the society. We've contributed in one way or the other. We as parents or the caretakers have contributed so much to the domestic trafficking such that we encourage our children to partake jobs because of the challenges that we have in our families, in the society. So it's quite rampant in our country.
So where do Kenyans draw the line? There is economic hardships and people have to look for jobs. Does the government have any role to play to make sure they level the playing field?
Yes, the government has enacted some laws, but like we are all aware, the problem comes in implementation. We have the Children Act, we have the Sexual Offences Act, which has been implemented and legislated by Parliament. But then when it comes to enforcing these laws, it becomes a problem because we find our children getting initiated in forced labor, being transported, being recruited, and being coerced to perform forced labor. So basically the laws are there. The government has enacted some laws, but when it comes to the implementing part of it, that's where the challenge comes in.
Can you cite for us maybe some of the industries or sectors where this is prevalent here in Kenya? And maybe, some advice to the Kenyans watching and what to do to avoid being or falling to that trap of having their people or their children, be victims?
Trafficking is common in almost all industries, but it's quite rampant in the agricultural industry. Why? Simply because this is an industry that gets more of the unqualified people in terms of education background, people who are more vulnerable, people who are desperate, and an industry where people do not put so much focus on academic qualification. So basically the agricultural sector is one of the key areas, the mining area, the transport area. Even in our streets in Nairobi, we've seen children begging. They've been recruited from the families. They've been transported to the city centers, and they are being forced to beg. So basically, it's a wide network, and it's quite rampant in all industries. Let's not also forget in our own homes. How many times have we talked to our parents or to our relatives in the rural areas and asked for children to come and help us? Basically, we are contributing even in our own households. We are telling our mothers to get us house helps. We transport them from the rural areas. We recruit them from the rural areas, bring them to Nairobi, and force them to work for us, forced work. We pay them very little. And sometimes they're even sexually abused in our homes. So basically, it's a wide problem everywhere.
Let me, Catherine, do you agree with this?
Totally, I do. And I keep saying that all of us are actually perpetrators in one way or another. Because as Scholastica puts it, if I need a house help, the much I need to do is probably call my mother back in the village and let her know that I am in need of a house help. And my mother will get to our neighbor whose child has not joined high school for one reason or the other. And most cases, it's about that the parent could not afford to pay the money needed for school fees. And when the child comes to my home, remember this is a child, so cannot give consent. So when she comes to my house, the next thing is that she'll be working 14 hours plus, she'll be receiving a very small wage in form of a salary, which mainly does not go to her, but probably goes to her mother or through my mother. And the possibility of even sexual exploitation in my house or in any other woman's house is real. And normally what this will do is that it will harden the child, the girl. It will harden the girl to a point that she becomes quite vulnerable, that when you have these other opportunities, these coercions, that there are jobs out in the Middle East and wherever other places, then she'll be among the first to be recruited, to go out of the country, to go and work, not as a house help, but maybe even in an office. But when they get there, their passports are confiscated, they're not paid the due that they had been told they'll be paid, and sexually and in many other ways, they are exploited. And that is where trafficking in persons starts right inside our homes, inside our families, and goes all the way to graduate to become the international level that we all are hearing about.
Right, I want us to talk about what happens in the Middle East, but before we do that, let's listen into a reaction that has come off the day that is being marked here in Kenya, in Mombasa. Let's listen into some of the things that was said earlier today.
Safiri nikaenda Saudi Arabia, mji wa Jeddah, na niliondoka Mombasa. Safari yangu nashukuru ilikuwa nzuri, nikaelekea mpaka Nairobi, na Nairobi ndio nilichukua ndege mpaka Saudi Arabia. Kwa kusema kweli walinipokea vizuri matajiri zangu, na akanipeleka hadi mahali nitafanya kazi kwa nyumba. Kazi yenyewe ilikuwa ni ya nyumba. Nilipofika kwa hiyo nyumba ilikuwa na watoto 4, wasichana hili na vulana hili. Nilikaa hapo nao vijana vizuri, nikawashughulikia, akawa nafanya kazi vizuri, lakini baada ya muda huyo madam ndiye alianza kunigeukia kwa upande wa chakula. Alikuwa anipatia chakula, lakini mzee wake hakuwa mbaya, alikuwa ananishughulikia. Wakati mwingine akitoka kazini ananibebea chakula, ananipatia kisiri, lakini madam akimpata ilikuwa inaleta shida sana, wanakosana na mzee wake. Na ukija upande pia wa kunilipa malipo yangu, hapo ndo tulikorofishana, kwa sababu hawakuwa wanataka kunilipa pesa yangu baada ya miezi 3. Na mimi hiyo ndo nilianza kusumbuana na wao. Nilikaa tu nikavumilia mpaka baada ya miezi 3. Ulipofika mwezi wa 4, niliwaambia sasa mimi siwezi fanya kazi kama mtanilipa, kwa sababu mimi pia nimetoka Kenya kwa sababu ya shida zangu. Nimekuja huku nipate pesa inisaidie na familia yangu. Hapo ndo tulisumbuana, wakanichukua, wakanipeleka mahali ambapo naweza pata usaidizi. Walinipeleka polisi kwa ufupi.
Heartbreaking story there. And Catherine, it's just one of the many stories that we've heard and we've told, especially to Kenyan young ladies who go to the Middle East, being promised various jobs, whether working domestically or elsewhere, and it turns out to be a different story altogether, and it ends up a lot of times badly, even people losing their lives. Who is to blame for what's happening in the Middle East? Should young Kenyans just looking for work there?
Well, I think going back to where the rain started to beat us, we have had an education system that has so many cracks, has had very many cracks, so that girls who found themselves pregnant way back in the 70s and 80s and 90s did not have that opportunity to pursue their education. Not many of them had that. And as a result, they ended up being out there with their newborn babies and probably even sent away from their own homes because they brought shame to the family. Our education system did not really take care of such dropouts. And that's why I say the cracks between our fingers is one of the reasons why this has happened. And if this can be addressed or had been addressed early enough, that we cannot have 100% graduation of children from primary school to high school, from high school to university, and that we probably will have students dropping out of school as they proceeded from one level to another, then probably we'll not be talking about the number of girls and young men going out to the Middle East to look for jobs, because as the girl who's just given a testimony has said, because of shida zangu.
I hear you on the long-term solution. What about the here and now? Can the consulate, Kenyan embassies in Qatar or Saudi Arabia, whatever it is, can they do more to protect our people there?
Oh yes, but that needs to come right from where we are in our country, that the ministries that are all concerned with this need to probably have laws that are implementable in a way that anybody who leaves the country seeking for jobs outside of Kenya, they are monitored. And even way before that, the promises that end up being a deceit are kind of like taken care of right here in Kenya before the girls and the young men can leave the country. Because when they get there and then they are at a place of no return, it's only again the consulate and our embassies there that can take care of maybe following up on their cases before they become too hard, like we've heard of some of them who have even died when they're out there, and we've had the bodies brought back to Kenya, or girls escaping and coming back to Kenya. The consulates there and the government here, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, need to really work together to make sure that any child, any person who is leaving the country to go and work outside of Kenya is following not just the right process, but also the promises are real and possible.
It has to come right from here, from home. I mean, it is a story, it is something that has been, the authorities have been trying to try and explain. Let's now listen to the Nairobi County MP, Esther Prasaris, speaking about this very same issue.
When people are going out of Kenya looking for greener pastures and then they find themselves having been trafficked for as sex slaves abroad, we're having sex slaves even here in Kenya. So I think what we have to holistically address is the problem of poverty. Our moral fabric has also eroded to an extent that we are almost at a point where we can't save our social issues. Our social services has collapsed. The structures of social services have collapsed. We're trying to have them with the youth fund, with women enterprise fund, with a cash transfer for the old. We've got the PWD's fund, but have we really addressed the problem? All these funds and corruption is actually denying a lot of people access to the money. Human trafficking is a global problem. It's a global issue, and I think what's important is, we always put TV commercials for things that are not even that important. I think the relevant ministry should be starting to put TV commercials that actually talk to these issues, talk to sexual-based violence, talks to prevention, talks to human trafficking, talks to hope centers where people can come in and actually find a way to survive. We have to break the cartels in Kenya. We're not willing to break the cartels, and we cannot deal with corruption if we don't break the cartels. Let the mama mboga who is growing her sukuma wiki in a place that we know that is safe with clean water be able to sell that to a government body direct. No traders, no middlemen. Create warehouses all over the place so that we can make everybody produce food that we know is also safe. Because the biggest danger right now is that even everything, we're worried about whether our sugar is okay, our rice is okay, our fish is okay. So food security will create a lot of job opportunities, and it's a ready market because everybody eats at least 3 meals a day. The governors should actually come with incentives to Nairobi to get people to go back home to work. And, and create a mechanism that actually fits them, clothes them, and develops the counties. Yeah.
So a lot of long-term solutions, possible solutions, but Scholastica, I want you to get your views on what happens abroad, what happens in the Middle East mostly. We've had other countries who take these things very seriously. If they hear their countrymen, even if it is just one of them, being mistreated somewhere, they take it very seriously with those embassies of those countries, and it becomes a major diplomatic row. We hear of cartels here in Kenya, especially on the people who are promised the young girls jobs and all that. From where you see, do you think the government is serious? Do you think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Labor are serious in addressing this issue once and for all?
I think that we do not treat this issue as seriously as it deserves. Because I know that the people involved in trafficking, the agencies that are involved in recruiting and transporting these people are well known to the government. What has the government done to restrict and to put measures and to put conditions to these agencies so that when they pick our young children, our girls, and take them abroad, are they followed to ensure that what they promised is what they are giving? We have the consulate abroad and all those other countries. Are they following up with these agencies? Unfortunately for us, I think we talk too much and we do very little. Look at issues of punishments, giving stricter punishments to these agencies, of course, those who are seen to be violating the laws. I think we only talk too much, but when it comes to acting, we are a bit lenient with the acting. The government, the implementers of these policies, must take these things seriously. The agencies are known. They have their licenses. They are followed. They know exactly what they are doing. So when they give misleading information, the government should take action. So yes, I think the government is not doing enough to protect our young girls and women.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break here on this discussion. Don't go too far. We are back for the final thoughts on this. We're talking about human trafficking on this World Day Against Trafficking of Persons 2018. This is KTN News Desk. Don't go too far.
This is KTN News.